Hello friends and welcome back to The Bearded Fool Gaming. Today we are continuing our Aether Revolt spoiler discussions. We didn't get much discussion going yesterday, but here's hoping that we get some voices in here and let's talk about what we are seeing. So now yesterday I was able to sort by color, but today I'm going to do it a little bit easier just to make sure we don't repeat ourselves. And I'm just going to go by the order they were released. MTG Salvation keeps a little history here of how they were released, so it's pretty handy for things like this. As always, I'm going to take a look at these more so from a limited perspective, focusing primarily on draft and sealed, with a little bit of standard commentary here and there. Again, any feedback is appreciated, and let's jump right in. So, let me go ahead and close out a couple extra windows I have here. And there we go. So, yesterday we left off with whatever SRAM's expertise we've already went over. So, today we're jumping right into a really cool legendary artifact. This is Gonti's Aether Heart. Snatch's ability is that whenever Gonti's Aether Heart or another artifact enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy. You can then pay 8 energy. You exile Gonti's Aether Heart and take an extra turn. This just seems so cool. I really like this ability. If it wasn't legendary, it would be totally broken. So good job on that. But the fact that it itself provides 2 energy is interesting. And the fact that any other artifact, that includes servo tokens, coming in gives you 2 energy each, that's a lot of energy production. I can definitely see this having a place in an energy deck, and taking an extra turn is just, maybe it's going to be win more, but that's going to win some games, I think. I definitely think this will see some type of standard playability. It may not be that ultimate bomb that everybody's looking for, but I think it will have something, some deck somewhere that's going to use this correctly. So moving on here, we've got, we actually already looked at that one. We've already looked at that one. Already looked at that one, haven't we? I think we already went through a few of these, actually. Hold on a second. I know we did that. We did that. No, we did that. Alright, so I think this is where we left off. So we're at Merchant's Dockhand. It's an artifact creature, a 1/2 for just 1. It's always good to have little 1-drops. It's a little weird ability. 3 into blue, tap, and tap X untapped artifacts. And you get to look at the top X cards of your library and put 1 into the hand and the rest on the bottom. So it's kind of like a scry-ish ability, but it's pretty expensive. The fact that it's 4 mana to essentially draw 1 card, I don't know if it's as good as, you know, maybe I'm underestimating it, but that seems a little too expensive to be really good. But, I mean, it is a 1-drop, and it does allow you to filter out. You know, it's kind of, like I said, a scry ability, and it really allows you to dig potentially really deep in the right deck. So, I'm not going to discount it entirely, but I don't think this is going to be a bomb or anything. I think this is just one that it'll probably be played in some deck somewhere, but it's nothing to write home about. Moving on, we've got one of the beauties of the set. They finally reprinted Ornithopter. You got it. 0/2 flyer for 0. Oh, it's such a beautiful sound. And it's a Thopter, so it fits right in here. I was so hoping this was going to be reprinted, and it is. It is what it is. It's a Thopter. It's a 0/2 flyer. It's free. You'll play it. It'll count as an artifact. It'll do some shenanigans, especially in Kaladesh, but again, it's an Ornithopter. People know what to expect with it. The fact that it's a 0 cost does give some implications with the paradoxical outcome, I believe, decks. Bounce a bunch of these, play these, you know, like they have been doing, but they've had to be using bone saws. And now that they actually have creature blockers to do that with, maybe they'll pick up a little bit. Next up, we've got a red card in Hungry Flames. This is an instant for 2 and a red. Deals 3 damage to a creature and 2 damage to a player. Seems pretty interesting. I'm not sure how strong this is compared to the other big reds, you know, Fiery Tempers and Incendiary Flows and stuff, but I mean, it seems really strong, honestly. It's 2 and a red, not even double red, and you get 3 damage to a creature. And then you're automatically getting 2 damage to a player. I mean, there's nothing to complain about here. It seems like an awesome card, and I think this will see some playability in aggressive red and red burn, and you know, not Aether work, Dynavolt Tower decks. I mean, it just seems like it does everything that red wants to do, of course. So I definitely see this being a playable, high pickable in draft and sealed, and just a good card overall. This is a good card, good design. It's just good. Moving on, we've got one of the legends of the set. This is Richcar Pima Renegade. 2/2 for 3. So whenever he enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Then, he gives all creatures that have any type of counter on it, tap, add green to your mana pool. This guy seems interesting, and I'm not sure exactly what he's going to be doing. He definitely goes along with the +1/+1 counter theme, and he definitely goes along with the themes as far as you know, buffing creatures and doing things like that. But the fact that he has that ramp ability maybe is what makes him super relevant. I'm not sure. I just don't think he fits. It's so like a ramper for 3 that requires previous setup. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm counting him here, and he is essentially a 3/3 for 3. So I mean, you gotta account for that. So he's an elf, so that's relevant probably, and it seems pretty cool. But we'll see where he goes. Maybe there's gonna be some elf deck come up in standard. I doubt it, but you never know with stuff like this. Next up, we've got a red rare in Release the Gremlins. This is a XX red spell with destroy X artifacts, create X 2/2 Gremlins. Seems like a pretty fun card. Seems pretty decent too. I don't know if it's something that you can get by with playing in constructed, but it definitely has a place in limited environments. Even if you only get 4 mana into it, destroy 2 artifacts and get 2 2/2s. That's still totally relevant, and I think that's a high playable card, especially with as many artifacts as the Kaladesh block holds. So I'm definitely anxious to see where this goes, and I think it's just a fun card too. It looks cool, has good art, flavor text is decent, so it's just a fun card, and I like to see XX spells in general, so that gets my thumbs up, seal of approval there. We got a mythic here in Aetherwind Basker. This is a big guy, a 7/7 for 7. The synergy. So he's a 7/7 trampler, and whenever he enters the battlefield or attacks, you get 1 energy for each creature you control. That's where he is really relevant. Then you can just pay an energy to give him +1/+1. So considering that this guy can easily attack, you have a small board of 3 to 4 creatures, and well, all of a sudden you have, an 11/11. He seems pretty strong. I mean, he is a 7-drop, so I don't know if he'll see constructed playable in such an aggro-heavy environment, if it stays that way. But he definitely seems like a fun limited card, and maybe there'll be some reanimator or something or other that plays him well. I don't know. Regardless, I like the art, and I like the way the ability plays out. Rewards, going wide with lots of creatures and tokens and things like that. So, pretty well-designed card, in my opinion. So moving back here, we've got Inspiring Statuary. Not statutory, statuary. So this is a 3-cost artifact, and it simply has all of your non-artifact spells have Improvise. So this is a card that's more so, I think, to go with the mechanics and flavor of the set than it is to necessarily be a super playable card. Improvise is a cool mechanic, and it's potentially broken on the right cards, probably. I don't know how it's going to play out, but this seems like a Johnny-ish combo card in a way, and I don't know. This is probably not a limited card. This is probably something that's going to go in some weird modern deck or something, if it fits anywhere, but it's cool they made the card. I like things like that, so it's interesting to see how Improvise plays in different environments, so that'll determine if this is a good card or just an interesting card. Next up, we've got Spire of Industry. This is a land, and it taps out a colorless. You can tap it and pay a life to add any color to your mana pool, but you can only do that if you have an artifact. Honestly, this is a pretty awesome card. I could see this going in so many different decks, so many different formats. I mean, Commander's going to love this thing. and it just does a lot. Considering there's not a lot of color fixing in this set, it's especially going to be good if you can get them in limited. But really, I mean, obviously this is something that you're going to be using in, you know, multicolored artifact decks, and it just seems absolutely great. It's well designed and seems pretty balanced. You know, it is a pain land, and it's just cool. You know, the fact that it turns off when you don't have artifacts is a good way to play around it and keeps it from becoming a straight-up pain land. And I like it. I think it's a fine card, and I think it'll see a lot of playability. As far as Richcar's Expertise, this is another of the Expertise cycle, but this one actually costs more. So it's a 4 and 2 green sorcery, and you draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. So you have a 4/4 and a 6/6, where you draw 6 cards for 6 mana. I don't know if it's really worth that. But then you get to play any spell in your hand that costs 5 or less for free. And that's 5 or less, not 3 or less like the other 2 Expertises. So that has some interesting applications. You know, let me, I'll draw 3 or 4 cards and then wipe the board with Fumigate, you know, etc., etc. I don't know if it's going to be that good because it is so naturally expensive, but it seems like it could open up some very interesting plays when it does go off, if it's played. Limited, it seems pretty strong regardless, so I definitely could see that being a high pick there. Next up, we got Aegis Automaton. This is a 0/3 for 2 with the ability to pay 4 and a white to return another target creature you control to its owner's hand. So this definitely seems like a card that's made to set up Revolt, but it's so expensive. I mean, I get why they do it, because if it was cheap, you could just bounce your stuff and have infinite blockers, and it would just be, you know, obnoxious. But at 5 mana, it's almost nigh unplayable, potentially. It's also a 0/3, so it doesn't quite have that magical number to survive. I wouldn't say this is a bad card by any means, but if you have some dedicated Revolt deck and limited, that's going to be about its only purpose. And it can't even return itself, which is disappointing too. So, I don't know. The cost there is a big turnoff, but we'll see if anything comes from that. Next up, we have Druid of the Cowl. This is a 1/3 for 2, and it simply taps that a green. So this is our mana ramp of the set. So don't think it's nearly as good as Miss Energy, you know, producer from the last set, but this one is a common, so I guess, you know, you have the likelihood of possibly getting both. It's an elf, you know, that's relevant, I suppose, and it ramps, but ramping on turn 2 is just sometimes irrelevant. Being a 1/3 is whatever. That's nothing to write home about. It's better than nothing, but I don't know. I'm not impressed by this card. It'll probably see some play, but I think Miss Energy has her work cut out for her. I don't think she's going anywhere. Next, we've got Aid from the Cowl. This is an enchantment for 3 and 2 green. So now it only works if you have a Revolt trigger, but what it does at the beginning of your end step, if you have Revolt essentially, then you can reveal the top card of your deck. If that is any type of permanent card, you just put it straight on the battlefield, and otherwise you put it on the bottom. So this seems pretty absurd if a deck is built around it that can abuse it. If you have a way to reliably, you know, organize the top of your deck, you know, Sensei's Divining Top or something like that, maybe this is actually good. Oh, let me put in a free Emrakul. Let me put in a free, you know, whatever you want to get. That seems pretty strong. It also ramps you, you know, if you're just doing it random, and if you don't have a lot of instants and sorceries, you know, it's really going to hit most everything. So, it seems like an interesting card. I don't think it's super good in standard constructed. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe somebody makes some beautiful Emrakul Aetherworks deck using combinations of these. I don't know. But whatever it is, it seems fun and limited, and that's primarily what we're focusing on. And I would definitely play it if I had it. Moving on, we've got Aether Goad Miner. This is a 3/1 for 2. That's somewhat relevant. He's a Dwarf Scout. That's somewhat relevant. When he attacks, you get 2 energy. That's pretty cool. And you can pay 2 energy to blink him. What would be the purpose of that? Oh, wait. We have the Revolt mechanic in this set. So now does at any time I can trigger Revolt by paying 2 energy? Seems pretty crazy strong. This guy is going to see some type of standard playability, I feel, especially if there's some type of dedicated Revolt deck out there. I'm not sure exactly what that deck is going to entail, but I think if that exists, this guy will be in it. As far as limited, he's pretty strong. He's a 3-1. That's super relevant for a 2-drop. He does die to servos, so it's something to watch out for, but considering he can just save himself, what's there to complain about? This is an awesome card, and it's going to be a pretty crazy card in the set, I believe. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him kind of be a sleeper hit or something like that. We've got a common in Countless Gears Renegade. This is a 2-2 with Revolt, and its Revolt trigger is simply that you get a 1-1 servo. Seems kind of bad at first, but then when you think about it, you actually are getting a 3-3 for 2, essentially, if you can trigger Revolt. But now the hard thing is, how do you trigger Revolt on turn 2? There are some cards like the map that let you, sack it to get it out and things like that, but it seems a little limited even for limited, so I'm not sure how well this is going to play out. We'll have to see where it goes, but I'm not super impressed with it. He's a 2-2 bear at worst, so I guess he'll see some limited play, but that's about it, of course. Speaking of the map, here we go. This guy works with the Countless Gears Renegade. So it's a artifact for 1. It does enter tap, but it's a free tap, sack, search the library for a land, and put it in your hand. So if you do have the God draw of Renegade map into Countless Gears, that's a pretty strong start. But again, it's just one of the implications. It is good to see more color fixing, and it is a common one, so that'll be pretty easy to get. It makes Prophetic Prism not, even less of a draft pick, and gives you some options in that regard. And it's always good just to have a little land filter card like that. So I definitely see that having some high playability in limited. Moving on to one of my favorite cards in the entire Kaladesh block, Mechatronic Production. I'm not going to say it's good, but I am going to say I'm going to build a deck around this. So it's an aura for 2 and 2 blue, and you have to enchant an artifact you control. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you create a token that's a copy of that artifact. Then if you have 8 artifacts with the same name, you win the game. Seems pretty silly at first, but then when you think about it, it doesn't have to be 8 of the artifact you've enchanted. Actually, that would work with servo tokens. Can there be a blue-white token deck? I don't know, but I'm sure as heck going to try it. A couple servo exhibitions, maybe get the white expertise card out, and just drop this, and, it does require a whole turn. It has to live, your artifact has to live, so we'll see how viable that is, but it just seems pretty fun. And it's also good if you can, get it on a Gear Hulk or something. Yeah, pretty absurd. So I love the card, and I'm going to try to build around it in Standard, and I'm anxious to see if there is some deck that can come from it. I don't expect it to be super competitive, but it looks like something that will be super fun. Moving on here, we move to Glint Sleeve Siphoner. This is a very interesting card. This is a 2-1 for 2 with Menace. Don't miss that. It's kind of, right there at the top. Kind of look by it. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get an energy. And then at the beginning of your upkeep, you can just pay 2 energy to draw a card and lose a life. It's not as good as similar cards in the past since it does require that energy. But in a dedicated energy deck, that's a lot of extra draw power. Also, it's optional. That's very interesting too. A lot of times the card abilities like this that do the draw 1, lose a life are not optional. So that's an interesting implication coming from this. It itself getting the 1 energy on coming in, is whatever. It essentially sets itself up to be used at least 1 time, which is good. But it is a 2-1 menace for 2, so this is going to be played, I would imagine, in some type of standard deck. I definitely see it being played in limited, just for the evasion aspects of it. So Glint Sleeve Siphoner I expect to be a pretty solid card. Don't think it'll be necessarily a super high dollar card, but I think it will have a lot of playability. Moving on, we have Hinny Undying Partisan. He's a 2-2 for 2 and a black with haste. Oh, one of those black haste guys. Don't get too many of those. So whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, he gets a +1 counter. And you can just sack any other creature and gain indestructible until end of turn. An interesting application of this is there's actually only like one other free sack outlet. And I was actually working on a deck at one time that needed to sack outlet, so it's cool that we actually got one. But I actually think this guy's pretty solid. Considering it does have that free, become indestructible, let me block with my servo, and make myself indestructible. Seems pretty strong. And the fact that he's going to be progressively getting bigger, he's definitely something that they have to answer or lose in a limited state. So this guy is going to be a limited bomb, absolutely. I actually hope to pull him at the pre-release. I think it'd be super fun to play with. And we'll see what happens with him. I don't know if he's going to be constructed playable, but I definitely think he's limited high god tier. Moving on, another of my favorite cards in the set, we have Reverse Engineer. Unfortunately, it's a sorcery for 3 and 2 blue, and it seems bad already, right? And all it does is draw 3 cards. But the fact that it has Improvise gives it a lot of implications, because if, say for example, my blue-white token deck, that's probably not going to happen, comes true, this all of a sudden becomes 2 blue, draw 3 cards. It would be so broken if it was an instant, I'm just saying. I wish it was an instant so bad. But at sorcery speed, it is what it is. 2 blue for 3 cards is awesome if we can do that. And at 5 mana, it's pretty mediocre, but, even at 4, even at 3, it's gets more playable as it goes down, obviously. So I'm anxious to play with it. It'll probably have a place in a few decks here and there, but again, it's nothing to write home about. But it's just a cool card that I really, really like myself. I also really like the design of it too. Just a cool card in general. Moving on, we take a look at Teasers Touch. This is an aura enchantment for 1 a blue and a black, and essentially it just takes Teasers Planeswalker ult and applies it on the aura, so it's pretty bad. So all it does is make your enchanted artifact a 5/5, and if that artifact's put into a grave, then you return it to its hand. So I don't think this card is very good. It's an aura, so it's naturally bad. All it does is it requires something else to set it up, and an artifact. It allows you to get potentially 2 for 1, even though you do get the card back. I don't know. It just doesn't seem that strong to me. I'm not impressed by it. I don't even know if I would play it in limited. But nonetheless, it is a card that will probably be played in some weird deck because you like to have a 5/5 artifact. And, a 5/5 for 3 isn't the worst thing in the world, but we'll see what happens with it. Got another cool card here because I'm a sucker for green-blue. This is a Rogue Refiner. This is a 3/2, and whenever it enters battlefield, you draw a card and get 2 energy. So it's a little bit of an Elvish Visionary there, but it also has the energy mechanic going on. Green-blue likes energy anyway, and is a 3/2 for 3, which is definitely relevant. So I think this card's pretty solid. I don't think there's anything really bad to say about it. Nothing mind-blowing either. He's just a solid, aggressive green-blue creature that does what you need. In green-blue, in Kaladesh Limited especially. Does he have any constructed playability? It's unlikely, but maybe there's going to be some deck, whatever that deck was that played Elvish Visionaries and things. I mean, he does fill that niche role of being a cantrip card and doing the energy, so, maybe he'll fit somewhere. I'd like to see a green-blue deck exist, so that would be pretty cool. Next up, we have Renegade Rally. This is a 3/2 creature again for 3. This time it's 1 a green and a white. And he has a Revolt trigger that simply allows him to reanimate a 2 or less permanent. So what's interesting, and I actually didn't realize this, is he can get lands back. So that's pretty cool. But there's a lot of decent 2-drop cards in Limited. But this guy seems like if he's played, it'll probably be more in a constructed environment to bring back, your Grim Flayers and things like that. I don't think he'll necessarily have a place there, but that seems where he would excel if he was playable. In Limited, though, he's definitely nothing to scoff at. I mean, he's a Reanimator spell for 3. If nothing else, he gets you a land. If nothing else, he gets you, one of your Puzzle Knots or something like that. So seems pretty cool, and I definitely think that he fits into, even though he seems like more of a white-black card, really, he'll probably fit into quite a few limited decks, and I don't see any reason not to play him. He's aggressive, he's green-white, and he reanimates. That's just a solid limited card. And that's it. Today is a little bit shorter because there's less cards spoiled today, but again, I'm going to try to do one of these each day just to try to keep up with all the different cards. So definitely shaping up, Aether Revolt, that is, shaping up to be a really fun and really interesting set. Definitely has a lot of fun limited environments that it's going to create, I believe. Kaladesh Limited has already been really fun, and I've drafted a ton of it. I can't wait to add Aether Revolt to the mix to see how that mixes things up and adds new, new experiences in there. Again, keep in mind, pre-releases are coming up on the 14th and 15th. Don't forget, Saturday and Sunday at some places for Two-Headed Giant and such. So definitely lots to look forward to. Again, if you guys have any feedback for the stream, for my videos, for my commentary, let me know. I want to hear it. Am I bad? Am I good? Am I mediocre? Hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, this is TheBeardedFool, and I am signing off. I'll catch you guys next time.